All right, so we have our mead heating now. And as this mead heats, we are going to add our vanilla bean. And we're just going to let that sit in there and simmer so that the aromatics can really kind of pop out of there. And as you can see, the pot's getting a little angry. I kind of have to balance some other stuff. I got a glass cooktop here, so I have to balance other stuff to keep it from rocking too much. But our thermometer, if you look, we can monitor the temperature change. Once it hits about 140, we'll just pull the heat down to a simmer and let it sit for the 20 minutes, as we said. Anyway, as this is heating up, we're gonna go ahead and sanitize our equipment. So this is my bucket that we're gonna use to ferment in, and it's already been cleaned, but we need to fill it with sanitizer. So we'll make 5 gallons of sanitizer, and we're just going to let that bucket sit and soak in that sanitizer. We'll also add this piece, these 2 pieces. These are going to be our airlock that keeps the bacteria from getting in while we ferment, but it also allows the carbon dioxide to escape, so you don't have a giant bomb that you're sitting on. So here's our lid. Anyway, we're going to fill this guy up with sanitizer. I like to use this product, Star San. It's a little measuring spot on the top. This one goes up to a half an ounce, so we're going to do 2 half ounces here. And 1 ounce of Star San with some water. And we'll just add the water till we measure out 5 gallons. The bucket over here will tell us when we reach 5 gallons. But that'll kill any germs. It's a food grade sanitizer, so I wouldn't suggest drinking a whole bunch of it, but this is the same stuff that's used in bars and restaurants to clean your glassware, clean your plates, etc. So perfectly safe, no problem with it reaching any contact with anything that's going to turn into alcohol. And we'll come back once we have reached the 140 degree climax, and we'll show you what to do after that. All right, as you can see, we have reached 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to set my timer here for 20 minutes. And scale it back. Anyway, we're going to pull our heat down to just like a low simmer, just to try to hold that temperature as close to 140 degrees as possible. And we're just going to let that solution kind of meld, let the aromatics come out of the vanilla, infuse into the honey. Hopefully at 140 degrees. We're going to hold it at 20 minutes. Hopefully that will kill off any microorganisms that might have been already present in the honey, while also not doing too much to damage the natural botanicals and aromatics that we're looking for in the honey. After we've set it 140 degrees for 20, our next step is going to be to take this solution, which is now called a must. So we'll take our must and we're going to try to cool it to about 72 degrees as rapidly as possible. So our goal will be to just throw it into an ice bath and bring that temperature down as quickly as we possibly can, so as to not allow any bacteria or wild yeast that might be in my house, on any of my equipment, etc., to hatch their own plant and start their own fermentation. So we're going to bring it down, cool it, add a little more water, add a little yeast nutrient to it, and then add the yeast, and then it's just a matter of time as we let it sit and ferment. So we'll come back when we're ready to do the ice bath. All right, so our timer went off. So our must sat at 140 degrees for 20 minutes. We are now going to remove it from the stove, and I've created an ice bath here in the sink. So in other words, I went and bought like a good 10-pound bag of ice, filled my sink with that. We're going to take the pot with the must in it, just add it right on top, and then just fill the sink up with water. And the goal here, the must is about up to here in the pot. So we want this pot to sink in there, and we want the whole thing to be kind of immersed in ice water. And we can just take wire whisk and stir it a little bit just to try to get the convection going, try to get it to release heat and cool down as quickly as possible. So here we are. The must is in our ice bath here in the sink, cooling. And I like to give it a couple of good stirs while it's cooling, just to make sure that we're cooling evenly and not just the outside of the pot. As you can see, I've already lost about 10 degrees here. So this must will cool off pretty quickly. I'm going to say probably about 10 or 15 minutes. We'll have this guy down to about 72, 73 degrees, which is exactly where we want it. From there, we're going to add it to our fermentation bucket. Once it's in the bucket, we're going to add a little bit more water to the solution to bring it up to about 5 gallons. And from there, we'll add our yeast nutrient, which is just kind of like plant food for yeasts, basically. It just helps get them active, really encourages them to do their job. And of course, we'll pitch the yeast. In this case, I'm going to be using a red wine yeast, as I think I said before, as the goal here is to make a semi-sweet mead. We want something that's sweet. I think that's what most people expect out of a mead, but we don't want like candy in a glass. We don't want something that's cloyingly sweet and just kind of gross. So we'll have back at it when we're ready to complete the final steps here before we just let the yeast do their job and turn sugar into alcohol. All right, as you can see, we are at our target temperature here in our ice bath. So my next step is going to be to dump this ice bath, and then I'm going to use this sink as sort of home base for the sanitizer that I have sitting in my brew bucket, and we will repurpose this sink as a sanitizer station for any equipment that needs to be sanitized or re-sanitized as we add more water to our must, and as we add our yeast nutrient and our yeast. And then after that, we're going to seal our fermentation bucket, throw our airlock on, and then we're going to let it ferment for 4 or 5 weeks in the primary fermentation. From there, then we'll move on to the secondary fermentation. Okay, so we are as sanitized and ready to go as we're ever going to be. So if you look in the bucket, you can probably see a little bit of foam left over. Don't be afraid of the foam. It's a little residual sanitizer. It's not going to hurt the process. It's just going to coat the inside of it. It's really not that big of a deal. Like I said, you don't want to take a giant drink of Star San, but it's not going to hurt you to have a little bit in your drink, and it's much better than the alternative, which would be to ferment all this and waste all of this money and time and have a bad batch of mead that is undrinkable. So, if you look on the side here, let's get that vanilla bean out of there. We want to let that sit in there and continue to do its job. I don't know if you can see. You can see we hit the 3 gallon mark. We're trying to go up to 5. So we're going to take our sink, turn it on, just run cold water in here until we get it up to the full 5 gallons that we're looking for. And because it's so dark, the way the light hits is going to be easy for us to see. As we just fill this and top it off and bring it up to the full 5 gallons that we're looking for. Make sure you're running cold water. You want the cold water to run in there, not hot water or anything. We're trying to maintain that temperature. Yeast works best at room temperature, so that's what we're trying to achieve here. So we add the cold water, and it's going to maintain that temp. It's going to bubble up a little bit, and the smell is just fantastic. You get that beautiful botanical, flowery smell off of the honey. This back. So now we have our yeast nutrient. And the instructions on here, we're going to do 1 teaspoon per gallon. So we have 5 gallons altogether, so we'll add 5 teaspoons. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Now we have our yeast back here. So I made another little bowl of sanitizer. The outside of this package could have something on it, so I always sanitize the outside of the yeast package, as well as just like I said, we want as little contact with microbes as possible. Sanitized my scissors here in my sanitizer bath in the sink. Cut this yeast open. Some people pitch their yeast in warm water for 30 minutes before they use it. You can do that, but it's really not necessary. And I'm all about not taking unnecessary steps. So we're going to pitch our yeast. Just drop it straight into your must. We're going to grab a sanitized spoon out of our sanitizer solution here, and just give it a good gentle stir. Being careful not to directly touch the must, but we want to just get the yeast mixed in there really well. We want to get it to make contact with the yeast nutrient as well. Just let the yeast start going to town and eating those sugars. Finally, out of our solution here is our lid. Now, you can do open fermentation. Some breweries do that, like Belgian beers are done through open fermentation. That's not really for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of temperature control, a lot of environmental control, just to make sure that you don't have any spontaneous microorganisms getting into your stuff. A closed container is the best way to really control what you're going to be doing. So we'll just add our lid on top. Once again, a little sanitizer foam on the lid on top, no big deal. And then finally, we have what is called our airlock. So it's 3 compartments. Same deal, little foam's not going to hurt. There's a fill line here for water. I'm going to put this lock down on top. I'm just going to add a little bit of water, until we reach that fill line. Put your cap on top, and then your brewer's bucket here has a spot for this airlock to go. So we're just going to press the airlock down. What this airlock's going to do is, as the yeast eats the sugar and makes alcohol, there's 2 byproducts. So you have the sugar, and what the yeast is going to do as it consumes the sugar is create it's going to create alcohol, and it's going to create carbon dioxide. So if we just had this lid sealed on here and no way for that carbon dioxide to escape, obviously you're going to get more and more pressure from the gas, and it's just going to blow off and make a giant mess. What this airlock does is it allows the CO2 to escape, but it keeps air and other organisms out. See, this water and the top create a barrier. So now all that's left to do is to just throw this in a cool dark corner of the room, and let Mother Nature do its thing. All right, so now our mead has officially reached its final destination for a while. On the left here is our fermentation bucket. Obviously, we just set it so there won't be a lot of activity out of it for at least 24 hours. But just to give you an idea, what'll happen is you'll start to see this cap pop up, and that's how you know that the yeast is doing its job and turning the honey into alcohol, and that's how you know the CO2 is escaping. Honey's pretty stubborn, so if you're fermenting a beer, it takes about a week, maybe 2 weeks to ferment. The primary on a yeast is going to be 4 to 6 weeks and you'll know it's done with the primary when you stop seeing activity out of the lock here. So from here, in about 6 weeks, we'll probably do a video of this as well. We will move the mead from here into the carboy here, which is a process known as racking your meat. And what that does is it just pulls it off of some of that yeast, allows it to clarify, allows it to kind of rejuvenate, begin its secondary fermentation. This is where it'll spend most of its life. I'll taste it here and there, but this mead I'm thinking will take 3 to 6 months to complete its secondary fermentation. Once that's complete, then it'll be ready for bottling. From there, it's ready to drink. But anyway, that is how you make a honey mead. Thank you for watching.